got all of them except for Immortalized, but that's okay. Still got a lot to talk about here. Yo, what's up everybody? This is Jay Dennis, and I'm here with my friend Bryson from Bars Unlimited.
What's up, guys?
Did I say Unlimited? I meant Unlimited. Bars Unlimited.
Hey.
Good friend of mine, Bryson here. You got something you want to say about your channel?
Hey, you know what? A lot of the stuff that, he talks about on here is what kind of got me interested in doing my stuff. We just react to music, and it's just a great thing to just talk about music, have a great time listening to it,
Yeah.
Getting exposed to new bands, new artists and stuff. And, that's kind of funny that we started that, because what really kind of got me started into the genre of metal was the band that we're going to talk about today.
Exactly. So, Disturbed. We both got our Disturbed shirts on. Disturbed is, both of one of our favorite bands. For me, more so back in high school, but Disturbed is a mainstay for me. So it seemed like kind of a no-brainer. And much like with my Taylor Swift video with my wife, I figured why not have a good friend of mine who's inspired me to start putting out more content too. And together we're gonna rank Disturbed's 7 studio albums. I know that there's other albums. There's a B-sides album, but we're just gonna talk about their 7 studio albums dating from the year 2000 all the way up until Evolution, which I think came out in 2018.
2018.
Yeah. So we're gonna kind of just share what Disturbed means to us, go through all the albums, and then at the very end, go through our rankings. And if you just want to be boring and not watch the whole thing, not support a local channel, I'll put timestamps at the bottom to see where the final rankings are. But without further ado, I kind of want to start with like what Disturbed means to us, and I'll go first. So, at 29, I've been listening to them since the 10,000 Fists era, around 2005, 2006, when I was a sophomore in high school. But I like to think that I saw them touring in their prime. I saw them touring when I was in high school during my sophomore year. I saw them tour 10,000 Fists, and then I saw them tour Indestructible, which is where this shirt's from, Music as a Weapon Tour, 2009. Amazing concert. Chimera, Killswitch, Lacuna Coil, all these bands were out there. It was amazing. But Disturbed's been a pretty big part of my life for the most part. Not as much in the 2010s, but big enough during those formidable high school years to where, as you saw at the beginning, Dan Donegan's one of my favorite guitar players. Hard rock metal guitar player. He's very accessible. Disturbed actually writes really good riffs. And even if you're not like a master shred artist or solo writer, his solos, like Stricken was the first guitar solo I ever learned. So if you're trying to go from like intermediate to more advanced in a sense, learning Disturbed songs was huge for me, playing guitar as long as I have. So to this day, they're still one of my favorite bands, probably like in the top maybe 15. But I'm definitely excited to talk about them. What do they mean to you, Bryson?
So, like I mentioned before, they really kicked it off for me. Between them and Skillet, the first time that I went to a metal concert was actually at a sermon convention. And for Luis Palau, probably most of you guys won't know who that is, but he's a popular pastor. And anyways, I went to a convention of his down in Sacramento, and Skillet was playing, and we were like, oh man, we'll see how they are, but I'm probably going to get a headache. So I listened to that, and I was like, hey, not all metal is bad. And then at the skating rink, actually, they used to always play Down with the Sickness for the fast skate. And then I was like, man, I can really get into this song, fast skating, especially because the intensity. But then I started to think like, I really don't mind his voice that much. Maybe I would be into this band. So they were really, besides Skillet, the first metal band that I dove into. Yeah. So they really kicked it all off. They were the first ones pretty much that taught me that metal is not just screamo that's going to give me a headache.
Yeah.
And so they have and will always have a big place in my heart, and that's why, even now they're probably my first favorite band. And I didn't start listening to them until after Immortalized was out.
Yeah.
So for me, Evolution is a new album. The rest of them I listened to at the same time. So the years were kind of skewed for me.
Yeah, the way Dan Donegan's guitar soloing is pretty accessible for somebody
Yeah.
like me that was a novice back then. It's Disturbed is like an excellent metal band, also kind of like hard rock radio, depending on what song.
Yeah.
They are an excellent band, kind of like a gateway band. If you like rock music, but maybe you're not into the super heavy stuff, Disturbed is great. And
Yes.
the musicians in the band, David Draymond's one of the best vocalists I've heard. They're excellent live. They're one of the best, most tight live bands I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of metal bands, I've seen a lot of shows, and Disturbed is easily in the top 5 for me. They're super good. And I know you were going to see them this year, but the stupid
I was supposed to
coronavirus.
see their 20th anniversary tour of Sickness
Yeah.
this year, and damn coronavirus ruined it for me. But if all things go right, I'll be going to see them at the rescheduled event next year.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Who knows?
Yeah, so they're an awesome band. There's a lot of things to talk about. We could talk about them all day, but we want to respect the video. So we're going to go through all the albums, and then at the end we're going to rank them. But we're going to share what all the albums mean to us, and we're also going to share our favorite songs and any nostalgia value. I might have a little bit more, I'm a little bit older,
Yeah.
but I know he's been listening to them a lot more and more recently, so
Yes.
happy to hear about that. So let's start with 2000's The Sickness. So, what are the odds that on my channel I'm going to talk about a band that had a new metal era? This album came out during the turn of the century, and if Disturbed has any new metal elements in any of their music, it's on this album. So, for me, this was like their second full album I ever listened to. Or this might have actually been the first. Even though I didn't actually really listen to them in full until like 2005, during the 10,000 Fist era, my former stepdad actually had this CD, not this exact one, but he had the CD in his CD collection. So eventually I did go through and listen to it all the way and just stupefy. Well, obviously The Sickness, Down with the Sickness was, a huge song.
Yeah.
But the song that hooked me right away was Stupefy and The Game, and then Violence Fetish. This album is actually aged really well, and I think it's actually really well rounded. The only thing that it kind of suffers from is it's very front loaded. There's 12 tracks on here, and roughly the first 6 all the way up till Fear, I give them all around an 8 to an 8.5. Every track after that is just under like a 7. So no Disturbed album is by any means bad. I don't typically rank bands if they have any bad albums.
Yeah.
This album actually got an 8.10 out of 10 for me, which means it's a great album. But it's front loaded. So, but the front half is really good. Voices, The Game, Stupefy, Down with the Sickness, all the singles. But of course, my favorite tracks are The Game and Violence Fetish. But like, if you want that turn of the century new metal sound, listen to Fear. That chorus just sounds like an aggressive new metal song that you would hear. But when you get older, you kind of pick up on things you didn't hear when you were a kid. I didn't realize that Shout 2000 was the 2000 version of a song from like the 80s or something. So it's actually a pretty fun cover. And they're actually good live tracks too. They played Shout and Dropping Plates live. They're kind of weird to listen to on the album, but they're great live. But all in all, this is a solid album, and it really set the stage for all the success they're going to have later on. What do you think, Bryson?
Yeah, so, it's funny because if you guys have watched the Jay Dennis series before, you've heard him say some albums just kick off, but there are better things to come.
Yeah.
And that's what this album was for me. It didn't rank too high. I know we're getting into the rankings later, but honestly, for me, there was a lot of songs that just didn't really grab me. But one thing that I really want to get across is, well, first of all, Disturbed is probably my favorite band for a reason. So even their songs that don't really grab me are probably pretty high up in terms of metal songs that I listen to. Mostly because, like he said, they're just super accessible. One thing on Bars Unlimited that I've talked about multiple times is how there are bands that you can just listen to and just play through and enjoy listening to. And then for me at least, there are bands that I can't just let the album play through. There are songs that are just so not for me that I don't even want to listen to it.
Yeah.
Like Slipknot, for instance, I love some of their songs, but then other songs are just like, oh my god, what is this? Next.
Yeah.
And Disturbed, even my least favorite Disturbed song, I'm not skipping it. If it were to come on the radio, I'm not turning on a different station. If it comes on my Spotify playlist or something, I'm not like, oh no, not this song, next. So
Right.
I want to start by saying that, but my favorite songs on the album, like he said, Stupefy, I mean, it just, great song. Down with the Sickness, again, that ranks so high for me just because that's really the song that got it started. If I hadn't heard that song, I probably would have never even heard of the band. But they played that so much at the skating rink during the fast skate that I was like, man, what is this? And then, and then actually the other highest rated song for me was Dropping Plates.
Yeah.
I think that song is absolutely insane. I love that song. But then other ones that he mentioned, like Violence Fetish and Voices, I really didn't dig those songs too much. But I actually liked the last song, Meaning of Life, a lot.
It's a good closing track.
So the first 6, most of the ones that he talked about I did like, but Voices and Violence Fetish weren't really for me, and then Fear was okay. But again, like I said before, even the ones that I'm being critical of, they're still from my favorite band, so it's not like I don't listen to it. I do enjoy them. I mean, I did my rating on A+, A-, and so on, and the lowest song for me was Violence Fetish and Voices, and they both got a B-. So it's still not like, oh man, this song is horrible.
So it got me in college. All right. So, all in all, what'd you give the whole album though? Would you give that like a B or a B+?
Yeah, the whole album was a B+.
All right, yeah.
So.
Yep, I gave it like a B. So, all in all, great first album from Disturbed, to say the least.
For sure.
All right, next up.
Believe.
Just so you guys know, I'm probably going to do most of my talking for the first 4 albums, because these are the ones I grew up with. Next up we have Believe, their sophomore album, which was by no means a sophomore slump. This one got an 8.02, and by the way, if you're keeping score, you'll know the ranking, obviously, before the end of the video, but whatever, I'm still going to give the ranking at the end. But Believe is very similar structure to The Sickness. Most of the best tracks, for me, are at the beginning, but this album does have a bit of an X factor. It's got a lot of nostalgia value for me. I think it was the Christmas of sophomore year, so after I got into them with 10,000 Fists and Sickness, I got this album from FYE. I don't know if you guys remember, CD stores used to exist. And I would play this. I had this really cool gamer chair. I put this album on my iPod Nano, and I plugged it into my gamer chair, and it had speakers playing out the side. I would listen to this whole album while playing Tony Hawk Underground 2 on the PlayStation 2. So, I mean, that game already has Liberate on it, but I was like, why not listen to the rest of the album? This album just has like a darkness to it. It has like, I mean, as if The Sickness wasn't already dark, but this one's pretty dang dark too, but like, it opens on such a much better note with Prayer. Of course, Liberate's fast. My personal favorite track is Remember. It's just got great guitar work, the solo's fun, the lead work is fun. Again, Dan Donegan is a great guitarist, it's pretty accessible. But I also just like the new metal riffage of Intoxication, the da-na-na, da-na-na-na, na-na-na-na, like, they just get kind of nasty on this, and Dave Draymond does a lot of scat singing to the beat, and this album sounds pretty new metal too, so I definitely like this one. It does suffer, in my opinion, from like tracks Rise all the way up to Devour. Devour is probably one of the lowest ranked Disturbed songs on here throughout their entire catalog. But they wrap it up at the end with Darkness, which is a solid closing track. It's, you don't have to listen to Sound of Silence. They've been doing this for a long time. Darkness is a great closing soft track. So all in all, I think Believe is once again a great album. By no means a sophomore slump. It was a great transition from what they were doing to The Sickness to what they were going to be doing on in the future.
Very true.
What do you think about Believe, Bryson?
So, yeah, I agree with a lot of things that he said. In no way was it a slump or a downgrade. If anything, I thought Believe was a big improvement over The Sickness. I really enjoyed Believe a lot. I actually have 4 songs on here that got an A or a 95, and I like Prayer, Awaken, Intoxication, Mistress, and Bound, actually. So 5 songs that got an A, and then a bunch that got an A minus. There was only one track that didn't get a higher grade, which was just a B, which was Darkness, and that's not because it's not a great song. It's just
it's a little slow after
it's
such an album full of good riffing.
Yeah, it's slow, and it's just like, when I think, oh man, I'm in the mood for some Disturbed, let me turn this on, I'm not thinking Darkness.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Intoxication, Awaken, Down with the Sickness, stuff like that. They do, David Draymond, like he said, is one of the best vocalists that I've heard, and I think he's absolutely amazing. But you know, when I'm in the mood to listen to metal music, not all the time do I want to hear kind of instrumental in the background. I want to get, you know, grooving, and that song doesn't really have that. It's supposed to be a beautiful song, but it's also one of those songs where I kind of have to be in the mood to want to listen to it. Otherwise, it just kind of gets passed by. But it is a beautiful song. I actually gave this one an A minus overall. I thought this was a really good album, and yeah, so many songs from here with just epic choruses to me.
Yeah,
just ones that you just riding in the car and you're just like singing along, man.
Yeah, the religious elements, which he combines a bunch of religious symbols on the album cover. It sounds like you're listening to him preach and give a sermon. And even though tracks like tracks 7 through 11, Rise up till Devour, they're not like the best Disturbed songs. What this album really does deliver in its entirety is good, unique guitar work. Dan Donegan really does get really fun with the guitar work, and he didn't get boring at all with that. So, Believe, another great album.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have the one that started it all, at least for me. Probably their biggest album, 10,000 Fists. So we're going a little long, so we're going to speed it up here a little bit. 10,000 Fists is one of my favorite albums of all time. Just as a weighted scale, I gave it an 8.6 out of 10, which means it's just really great. 9 would be like excellent, but just because I attach a number to something doesn't mean I'm not going to say... I was working out to this album a few weeks ago. I was jogging, I was trying to lift weights at home. Stupid coronavirus, not able to work out at the gym. But from start to finish, there are no skippable tracks on this album. This album is solid. It's got amazing live tracks. This is the album that I saw them play certain songs live that they probably haven't played live in 15 years, like Overburdened. My top tracks on here are probably the highest ranked or highest rated Disturbed songs. Songs like I'm Alive, that powerful chorus with that beautiful guitar work, what Dan Donegan does with the power chords, with the way he changes the shape, and it really just sinks behind David Draymond's powerful voice. Overburned is a long, powerful track with a great solo. You can't screw with Stricken. That if you thought Down with the Sickness or Prayer were great singles, Disturbed came out powerful with Stricken. It's so good it got on Guitar Hero. It's the first guitar solo I ever learned. Now, one of my favorite tracks is actually Forgiven. Forgive me. It's a song you don't really hear about too often, but like when you see them on the 10,000 Fist tour, I saw a lot of these songs live. They probably haven't played them in a long time, but they were amazing. The lowest rated track I gave on here was Pain Redefined and Decadence, and I still love those songs. And Avarice, the closing track, I've learned that song on guitar too. It's just so fun. If you have a wah pedal and you're like your first year or two of playing guitar, learn the songs off of here. You will learn how to riff. You will learn how to play solos that will impress people. I love 10,000 Fists. It's one of my favorite metal albums of all time. What about you, Bryson?
Yeah, he said it all when he said there is not a low-ranked track on here. I don't have an album in the B's. I mean, a song in the B's. Every single track was either A- to better. My favorite track on the album actually is Pain Redefined. I just love that.
They're good riffs. They're definitely good riffs.
Man, and then that chorus too, I just love it. One thing that I really, really want to give Disturbed credit for too is their album title tracks on the whole, are excellent to me.
That opening, it's one of the most iconic openings that
Dude,
they've ever had.
And it's not just this album either. Pretty much every single title track from their albums in general are one of my highest rated songs. So good on them for that. And yeah, just so many great songs. Like he said, Forgiven, Overburdened, Deify is one of my favorite Disturbed songs. Just Stop is an excellent song as well, coming off of 10,000 Fists, which is, I mean, just a great song, just top to bottom, just excellent. And even Avarice, like he said, some of the riffs and stuff are just so unique, and just some of the things that they do on that track are just unlike anything I've really heard. And I just love this album. I mean, from top to bottom, just excellence, as far as I'm concerned.
I'll give you a guess. It's a single.
Okay.
But when I saw them live in 2006, when they were touring this album with like Stone Sour, and again Lacuna Coil, or was it Flyleaf? Guess what song they opened up their set with? I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with retarded.
Guarded?
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, so they come out the gate playing Guarded, and I'm super close to the front row. It was gorgeous. It was such a great set. Like, that was one of the best concerts I ever saw. And of course, I saw Corey Taylor and Stone Sour.
Yeah.
It was awesome. So 10,000 Fists is just an iconic album.
Dude.
So how do you follow up 10,000 Fists, but they followed up with yet another one of their best albums? Yeah, so Indestructible is kind of the last major nostalgic album for me. I actually bought this on my 17th birthday. It came out like the week of my 17th birthday, and in Florida, where I'm from, it's weird to have school in June, but I took a day off. I was old enough to drive, so I drove to the mall. I bought their special edition of this. This is the same exact one. Still in great condition. It's got the DVD. It's awesome. Indestructible, even though it technically, this is going to piss off a lot of Disturbed fans, it might piss you off. Although it opens with my least favorite single, I just think Indestructible sounds kind of like a bare bones version of Stricken. Just as a guitar player, I analyzed the riff. It just sounds like a simplified version of Stricken. Doesn't mean it's a bad song though. It's a great live track. But this song, I saw them tour this album too, and just somehow they took 10,000 Fists and they just built on it. And Dan Donegan was producing this album. So he's responsible not just for the guitars, but he's responsible for all the effects you hear in the backgrounds, all the keyboards, all the little effects you hear. You see it in the documentary. The guy's a genius. He's really good at writing music, and you just hear a lot of dark tones in songs like Deceiver, Haunted. My personal favorite tracks off this album are, and by the way, when I talk about favorite tracks, I usually don't mention singles, because singles are kind of just a given that they're awesome usually.
Yeah.
But if they're your favorite, that's totally cool. Singles aside, my favorite tracks are The Night. Great song to learn for guitar. I also love the song Criminal. Criminal sounds like a track off of Believe. I didn't realize this until recently, but the song Criminal sounds like it belongs on Believe. So that was a great callback to them doing that dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, like that staccato rapping on top of the guitars. It sounds like Believe.
Yeah.
And then of course, Divide. One of my all-time favorite tracks from Disturbed. Fun guitar solo. Again, along with 10,000 Fists and Believe, this is probably the most sentimental album for me. This was like the anthem of, what was it, 2008?
I think so.
Yeah, 2008, summer 2008. This thing was constantly playing in my Jeep. I was constantly listening to it between going to friend's house, trying to see a girlfriend, what have you. I love this album. They toured it very well. And even though Indestructible is not necessarily my favorite track, it still opens on a good note, and it hits the ground running with Inside the Fire, and it just kind of gets progressively better throughout. What do you think?
First of all, the original album cover for this, to this day, my favorite album cover, take Disturbed out of it, any band.
Yeah.
My favorite album cover of all time is this Disturbed Indestructible one. That thing is legit fire, and then the songs on it do it justice too. Every single song on here was just crazy. My highest rated track actually is Indestructible. I just knew when he said that, I was like, oh, here we go.
I don't have a lot of popular opinions.
But with that being said, he mentioned something about he doesn't usually do singles, and see, for me, that's something that kind of differs for me, because I didn't listen to them at the time that they were singles. So for me, I'm just listening through the album, because I didn't start listening to them when they were like coming out popular. I listened to it like 10 years after they've already been out.
You might not hear it in the single sense, or
exactly.
If you buy an album, you might hear it before it becomes a single.
Like, I could probably guess which songs I think were singles, but I honestly couldn't tell you, because I didn't listen to it when they were singles. So to me, they're just another song on an album. So, but with that being said, man, Haunted, Enough, Divide, Deceiver, Inside the Fire.
So, Bryson, as somebody that's, I don't know how often you've played them lately, but as somebody with a drumming background, do you love the drumming on this album? You mentioned Enough. It's got a great drumming intro.
Yeah.
So does Perfect Insanity.
Dude.
As a guitarist, I love this album.
Yeah, the drumming on this album throughout is just so good. I love some of the different things and like the time signatures that they use, as well as it just sounds like it doesn't take away from everything else going on. Yeah. I feel like there are some metal bands that specialize in certain areas, and they know that they do that, so they really push that, and everything else is just kind of like a backdrop.
Yeah.
But I feel like Disturbed does a great job of having everything be on equal footing, and that's really saying something, because like he said, the vocalist is so good that you don't even need all the crazy stuff going on in the background to make great music, because he can just take it to another level. Indestructible, on top of being, having the craziest album cover I have ever seen, every song on here was just solid. The only track that was rated kind of low for me was Torn, but still, it got a B+. Yeah. So,
there's a bias, but yeah. How do you follow up 10,000 Fists? You do it with Indestructible. All right, so next up, truth be told, these next three albums, I'm not going to have as much to say about them, but again, I like Disturbed. I listened to these albums in their entirety. There's just not as much nostalgia value, but I can objectively tell you what songs are my favorite, and I can just be honest, and Bryson might have a little bit more to say about these, because this was more so when he got into them. So next up, we have the 2010 release, Asylum. I'm kind of torn between 10,000 Fists and this album cover being their best one. I think Indestructible has a badass album cover. I think Disturbed does album covers very well.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I really like this one. What I like about this album, this one has a tiny bit of nostalgia value, but I didn't listen to this one from start to finish a whole lot when it came out. There were just a couple of tracks like Serpentine, and honestly, even though this is by no means my favorite Disturbed album, and I think it aged decently, it actually does have one of maybe my top 5 Disturbed songs, The Infection. Amazing guitar riff, amazing chorus, amazing melodies, great solo. I've watched them play it live, and Infection is a great track. So, if anything, I would say that's one of the saving graces of this album. But, much like with Indestructible, if you put aside the opening instrumental track, which is great, Remnants is a great opening. Yeah. If you just say that it opens with the title track, which is a single, Asylum, not particularly one of my favorite singles either, but it's still good. My favorite tracks, sometimes my favorite tracks are singles. I just have this thing where I usually don't mention singles. My favorite tracks just happen to not be the singles, except for Another Way to Die. That's actually a single song about pollution and about climate change. I actually really like that song. And Animal's pretty good too, but again, my favorite tracks are Serpentine and The Infection, because the guitar work is great and David Draymond really complements it. So, not a whole lot of sentimental value with this album, and definitely not one I listen to the most, but it's got a couple tracks in there worth listening to.
I kind of fall in the same boat. This one was just kind of one of those that's a solid outing from Disturbed, but I didn't really have any tracks on here that really grabbed me, to be honest.
Yeah.
The highest rated track on here got an A-, but all of the songs on this album were from like an A- to a B range. So they're very good, solid tracks, but none of them are like oh man, this song is out of here for me. A lot of them are just like solid. They're what Disturbed is to me, just a band that I can just turn on, listen to, and have a good time with. But none of these songs on here really blew it out of the water.
What's your A- song?
Well, I have Asylum, Another Way to Die, Animal, Serpentine, and My Child. All had A-. I just think My Child, that one was kind of like a weird song, but I just like it for whatever reason.
Yeah, I didn't mention this, but I gave Indestructible an 8.3. I gave Asylum a 7.9, so it's just kind of straddling between the line of good and great. The album, it's not a bad album by any means. It's not one I'd listen to right away, but it has value in it, and it's still good.
Yeah.
But it's just more so a couple of tracks kind of carry the whole album. I wouldn't want to be excited to listen to tracks like Crucified or maybe the last track, ISHFWILF. I forgot what that stands for.
Isn't it a like a remix of something though?
Oh, yeah.
I think that one is the one that's like a remix of another, or not remix, but a cover of another song.
He says it in the lyrics. Like when I heard it, I was like, oh, that's what it stands for. I just don't know what it means now.
Yeah, but I mean, for that one, it's solid, but nothing really to write home about as far as I'm concerned.
Maybe that was that a bonus track? Yeah, screw it.
The weird thing is, on Spotify, that's on the regular album. But I don't know.
All right, so ready to move on to the next one?
Yep, Lost Children, right?
Immortalized.
Oh,
so
wait,
Lost Children. This is a B-sides album. It's not a studio album.
Oh, okay.
Do you have any nostalgia or stuff you want to share about this one?
Yeah, Hell is, no kidding, favorite Disturbed song.
Oh, all right.
Hell was my favorite.
Hell was my MySpace song back in 2006.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, I can't wait, because when he said that, I was like, oh man.
I've been meaning to listen to this album, but it's not going to be in my ranking because it's a B-sides album, but B-sides albums can be great, but I'm doing studio albums, but doesn't mean there's not great songs on this album.
Yeah, and then the other one for me is called Mine. There's a song on there called Mine.
Oh, I know what song
I gave that one an A+ as well.
Nice.
So I thought that was an excellent song. I totally forgot about it until I listened to it a couple of days ago while I was ranking this, and I was like, dude, this song is incredible.
Well, look, if you put it in your ranking, I want to hear where it's at, because I want to get some
I
perspective.
did put it in mine, so.
All right, so the only physical album we don't have is the one we're doing next.
Immortalized.
2015's Immortalized. I gave this album an 8.18. I think out of the whole 2010s decade, which consists of 3 albums, this is the best one. I think just like with Asylum, it opens up with a great instrumental. Dan Donegan decided to do 2 opening solos for 2 albums, which is cool. Immortalized is an excellent single and technical opening track, so I like that they hit the ground running with that. And then Vengeful One, this is kind of like Believe or 10,000 Fists, where they got back-to-back singles opening the album, and they just do a great job. Like, just the way David Draymond says "Messiah," like he sounds like a Messiah. I think "Open Your Eyes" is one of the weaker singles, but it's still catchy though. It's got great like phase work on the guitar. My actual favorite track on the album though is "Who." I don't know what David Draymond was smoking or what they thought when. Well, they must have been smoking when they wrote "Light It Up." That's what that song's about.
Yeah.
But the song "Who," not "Who Taught You How to Hate," but the song just "Who." I think that chorus is super catchy. It's got a great hook, great writing. That's my favorite track. This album doesn't have a lot of sentimental value, but I did listen to it when it came out in 2015. Not a whole lot between then and now, but I think this album actually aged pretty well. And just with regard to this last decade, this is the best one. Catchy guitar work once again, fire it up. Sound of Silence, kind of a polarizing song. I think it demonstrates Dave's amazing lower register. I know some people think Simon and Garfunkel was a cheesy band to cover, but just objectively, he did a great job singing on it. And yeah, the album just kind of closes slow with like Never Run or Who Taught You How to Hate. Those aren't my favorite tracks, but everything else though is great. I gave this album again about an 8.2, and my personal favorite tracks are You're Mine and Who, and also the singles are solid too. Yeah. What do you think, Bryson?
Yeah, first of all, Sound of Silence is actually the highest rated song on this album for me, just simply because it is epic. I think it shows off, like he said, his singing ability is so good on this, and especially if you watch him perform it live. I've watched him perform it live on YouTube multiple times, and every time it blows my socks off watching him. Just his vocal range from the lower register to up and higher and higher and higher to screaming. I mean, it's just unlike anything I've seen, really. Amazing. My favorite songs outside of that one on this album are the Vengeful one. I just love that track. Immortalized is really, really good. No surprise, like I said earlier, generally I like all of the self-titled tracks. And then Save Our Last Goodbye is also a really, really solid song for me. I just love the messaging in that as well. And one thing I did want to say too is, like, with some of them, I think it's Save Our Last Goodbye is a great example of how you can still have like kind of heavier riffs but have it be a beautiful song. It doesn't have to be, well, it doesn't have to be some of the songs from our next album to be a beautiful song.
Right.
Save Our Last Goodbye is a great example of a song that still maintains the heaviness from the rest of the album, but it's a beautiful song, and lyrically, or the writing in it is great, but it's not like, oh yeah, obviously this is a beautiful song because they slowed it way down.
Yeah.
So I guess
I gave that one a good ranking too.
Yeah.
The only song that got below an 8 for me was the last track, Who Taught You How to Hate, but every other track ranged between an 8.1 to an 8.5, so like B minus range. So 8.2. Immortalized is a solid album.
Yep.
Best album they put out in the last decade.
The only one the lowest rated one on here for me was The Eye of the Storm, and I know it's a great, excellent opening track, but I'm somebody that listens to music primarily on streaming services, and so when I have this stuff on a playlist and then I shuffle it or something, it doesn't, like, if it just comes on and it's not played in the order it's supposed to, it's like, what?
So let me ask you something real quick before we move on to the last album.
Okay.
When you were doing the Disturbed albums, were you listening to them on a shuffle, or did you listen to them from front to back?
I listened from front to back.
Okay, so just understand, because I get where you're coming from. We live in a different age now.
Yeah.
But we still know what it takes to kind of listen to the music the way the artist intended. They sequence songs a certain way on purpose.
Yeah.
And of course, if there's an instrumental leading into the opening track, so you got the full experience then.
Yeah. No, exactly. The way that they made it to go, it's great.
Yeah.
But when you're just like listening to it and you're shuffling something and that comes on and it doesn't go the way it's supposed to, it just sounds out of place and not something that I'm going to go out of the way to listen to.
Yeah. Speaking of which, let's talk about their last album.
Here we go.
All right, so last but least, we have Disturbed's Evolution. This is my opinion. If you love this album, that's totally cool. I actually bought this for him for his birthday.
I was going to say.
This is his copy. I bought it for him before I listened to it, but I think even if I had injected my own opinion onto it, I'm still happy that I bought it for him. So I think you can already tell how I feel about this album. I think this is kind of where I'm like, very rarely does an artist bat 100 every single time. Again, this is subjective. Even for one of my favorite bands, this album still got a 7.5, which means like it's good. It's just I didn't think it was particularly great for a few reasons. One, it's their shortest album, so in terms of like lack of substance, it's kind of sad. It kind of feels like they rushed this album. Two, whereas with like Believe, Immortalized, and was there another album that had a ballad on it? I think it was just those two. Those ballads were well placed. This album with 10 tracks, I think 4 of the tracks were soft. I got no issue with soft music. I just think the softness was a little too much on this one. Every other track seemed to be soft. I will say though, even though it's not particularly my favorite song at all, there's a song on here called Savior of Nothing. The guitar solo on that was excellent.
Yeah.
But every song on this album, except for The Best Ones Lie, every song got like a C. It got like between a 7 and a 7.8. But The Best Ones Lie got an 8. So no sentimental value for me on this album. I didn't really listen to it when it came out, except for the singles. The single "Are You Ready" is kind of another, to me, a little bit of a cookie cutter Disturbed track. He's doing his whole chanting thing, like you could just picture him going, "Are you ready?" It's like we get it, David. You know how to sound badass on the radio. I get it. This just sounds like a radio rock cookie cutter album. But again, if you're a Disturbed fan, you might still find some value in it. I'm still glad I listened to it. I don't like to sleep on stuff. Decent single, and then The Best Ones Lie is good. But other than that, I honestly don't have a whole lot to say about this album. What about you, Bryson?
Yeah, so first of all, I do not want it to come across like I'm going to absolutely crap on this album, because, like I said before, the worst Disturbed album I probably listened to as much, if not more, than a lot of other music.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to seem like I did not like this album, but this was my first new Disturbed album. I could not wait for this to come out. I was jumping up and down. The day that it freaking came out, I was like, man, I can't wait for this. Are You Ready came out, and then I think there was or maybe one other single or something that they dropped before. I think it was A Reason to Fight, or no, actually I think it was In Another Time. A couple songs came out before, and I was like, dude, if this is any indication of what the rest of this album's gonna be like, I am going to be losing it. And I was super, super excited. He got me the copy for my birthday. I was jumping up and down, and we got this.
Dan Donegan did not produce this album.
Yeah, listen, there are a lot of really good, meaningful songs on this album. But like he said, and he really did say it best when he just said, so many of the things, this album is just slow. And there's nothing wrong with slow if it's a longer album. But the problem is it's only 10 tracks. Yeah. And so it just seemed like half of the album was just instrumental, slow.
The pacing wasn't great, and there just wasn't a whole lot to digest.
No. So, yeah, I mean, I loved Are You Ready, In Another Time. Most of the tracks that are upbeat and fast, I actually gave a decent score on. But a lot of the songs on here, beautiful songs, but they're just not ones that I'm gonna go out of my way to listen to. I have, like, some of them you have to be in a mood to want to listen to, like Hold On to Memories, beautiful song. But am I gonna be like, man, I can't wait to turn that on? No, I don't want to get depressed. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it just
sounds like we're kind of on the same page about this.
Yeah, it was a good album, but
I'll make sure to buy you Immortalized then.
Especially with it being my very first Disturbed album, and how excited I was to finally get my first new Disturbed album. This was just a bit of a letdown for me.
Yeah, well, it only gets better from there.
Yeah, okay.
Alright guys, well, we appreciate you watching and listening to all of our insights on this. So with that being said, my ranking, which came kind of close to what I thought it would be, but I was a little surprised by a few things. One album got higher than I thought, and one got lower than I thought. My ranking from worst to best goes from Evolution, then we have Asylum, so we got, just lacking sentimental value, lacking consistency throughout at the bottom. So Evolution, Asylum, and this one made me sad, Believe. A lot of sentimental value, but just as an album, it didn't carry as much weight, but it's got a lot of competition ahead of it. Believe's still a great album. And then we have a tie, but the tiebreaker is the X factor between Immortalized and The Sickness. I'm going to give the slight edge to The Sickness because of the new metal element, and because my favorite track ranked higher than my favorite track off of Immortalized. So we have Evolution, Asylum, Believe, Immortalized, Sickness. Top two are Indestructible and 10,000 Fists by a long shot. Two amazing albums with a lot of nostalgia value. Saw them live. That's when Disturbed, in my opinion, were at their prime. Bryson, what was your ranking?
Yeah, so mine's also including The Lost Children. My least album was Evolution, Asylum, then The Sickness. Like I said, that one actually ranked pretty low because it didn't have the sentimental value, and I just think they got better as time went on.
Yeah.
The Lost Children, Believe, Immortalized, and then my top 2 were the same as his, but I had 10,000 Fists second, and Indestructible was my favorite album, plus my favorite album cover, plus album art. So.
And you know, I noticed that a lot of people put Evolution towards the bottom, and a lot of people put either 10,000 Fists or Indestructible at the top. So
yeah,
great minds think alike, buddy. So
I guess so.
Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a comment on what Disturbed means to you. What are your favorite songs? Your favorite albums? What do you agree with or disagree with us? Why do you think we're right? Why do you think we're awesome or the best? Also, I'll put it in the description box. Make sure you check out his channel, Bars Unlimited. It's a great channel. They put out a lot of content. They react to a lot of hip-hop, metal, other genres, and they react to other things too. Make sure you check that out. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to do more videos like this. Just got back from a little vacation. And Bryson, do you have any closing words?
Hey, show this man some support, guys. He does a great job on all of his ranking videos. Highly entertaining. I'm honored to be able to be a part of one of them, and you know, especially with it being Disturbed. But yeah, make sure that you guys, you know, if you like the video, hit that like button and share it, you know, get other people onto his channel, because he does a great job. So
all right, what do you say there, Bryson? Oh, wow. Not COVID.